The 2026 World Cup is the biggest ever, increasing from 32 countries to now 48. But that also opened spots for some weaker teams to get in. So according to FIFA's current ranking, what are the 10 worst countries that qualified? That's what we're gonna see, starting with a team that hadn't reached the tournament in 40 years. After playing in 1986, the national team of Iraq failed to qualify for every World Cup since then. And in the 2026 qualifiers, they struggled a lot as well, only making it through the playoffs, where they even had a hard time getting past Bolivia. Just to give you an idea, Iraq's most valuable player is only in England's 3rd division, so now they sit at 57th place in the FIFA ranking. But the craziest part is there are 9 countries even lower than that. Now the next one is another country that hadn't showed up in the tournament for years. After hosting it in 2010, South Africa failed to qualify for every World Cup that followed. But when the tournament expanded, the qualifiers suddenly became a bit easier for them. South Africa was placed in a group where the only real contender was Nigeria, who also wasn't in their best form. So with just a 1-point lead, they managed to qualify directly to the tournament. But after that, they continued to struggle. At the Africa Cup of Nations, they lost to Egypt in the group stage and were eliminated in the round of 16 by Cameroon. Then, to prepare for the World Cup, they played friendlies against Panama, but drew one game and lost the other. So South Africa now sits at 60th place in the rankings. Now the next team that's even lower in the rankings qualified in a weird way. In one of the Asian qualifying rounds, there was a group with Saudi Arabia, Iraq and Indonesia. Whoever finished first would go to the World Cup. Then Indonesia lost both games and Saudi Arabia drew with Iraq, but the Saudis still finished first. The reason? The number of goals they scored against Indonesia. That's how they qualified. But in their 6 World Cup appearances, they've been eliminated in the group stage 5 times. In 2002, they even suffered a 8-0 loss to Germany, and in the World Cup in Qatar, they defeated Argentina. But after that, they lost their next 2 matches, being eliminated in the group stage once again. Saudi Arabia is so unique that out of their 23 players in the last call-up, 21 play in the Saudi League, only 2 play in Europe, and not even for big clubs. So in their last 6 matches, Saudi Arabia won just 1 in extra time against Palestine, 1 draw and 4 losses, including a 4-0 defeat to Egypt in a friendly. So they are even lower than South Africa, sitting at 61st place. And at least Saudi Arabia has some World Cup experience, but the next country had never managed to qualify. They were always eliminated, until with the expansions of 48 teams, Jordan just needed to finish 2nd in the qualifying group to get a spot. They are a country from the Middle East, and the only standout player is number 10 Moussa Tamari, who plays in France and has a market value of 8 million euros. But apart from him, the average market value of each Jordan player is 350,000. For comparison, every player from Argentina has a market value of 26 million. Most of their players are just from Middle Eastern leagues. Now they're actually much better than they once were. They even reached the final of the Arab Cup, but now still sits at 63rd place in the rankings. Now the next team went from almost top 10 in the world to complete collapse. A little over a decade ago, Bosnia were 13th in the FIFA rankings, being carried by players like Dzeko and Pjanic. But after that, they couldn't renew their squad and also kept changing coaches constantly. So the results started getting very bad. In 2023, they even lost 4-1 to Luxembourg, and in 2024, it was a 7-0 defeat to Germany, along with other embarrassing defeats, making them drop dozens of positions in the ranking. Until their current coach started to bring order. He created a solid defensive system, brought new young talents and a new winning mentality. So Bosnia finally managed to reach the qualifying playoffs. But to make it to the World Cup, they would need to get past Wales and Italy, which was an impossible mission. And it looked even harder when in the match against Wales, they conceded a goal in the second half. Bosnia seemed eliminated, until in the 86th minute, Dzeko scored with a header. With that, the match ended in a draw and Bosnia won on penalties. Now to reach the World Cup, they would have to fight for the spot against Italy. And Italian players celebrated it. They thought it would be much easier to beat Bosnia than Wales. Even worse, as the match started, Bosnia's keeper made a huge mistake and Italy scored. Then Italy kept controlling the match, until in the 78th minute.
When you consider they're down to 10, and Barella hit it on the half volley. In front of him, Dedic with the cross! Oh, and it's been squeezed in!
Italy was already down to 10 men after a red card, so Bosnia started dominating possession. Then the match ended level and it went to penalties. But the story only gets crazier. Donnarumma had a cheat sheet showing where each Bosnian player would shoot, but then a ball boy invaded the pitch and stole that note. So Donnarumma had no idea where each Bosnian player would shoot and he couldn't save any. Meanwhile, Italy's players missed twice. By 4-1 on penalties, Bosnia qualified for the World Cup. That ball boy became a national hero. But Bosnia still has a long way to climb in the rankings, because they're still sitting in 65th place. But if Bosnia qualifying is surprising, the next team is playing there for the first time ever. It's a team from a tiny country with just 500,000 people that has barely even qualified for its own continental tournaments. Out of the last 14 Africa Cup of Nations, they failed to qualify for 8 of them. On top of that, the country doesn't even have a strong domestic league. I mean, its population is smaller than many cities. But this country, called Cape Verde, had one advantage. Many children of Cape Verdean immigrants were born in Europe and developed in stronger academies, like fullback Lopez Cabral, who came through the youth system of a Dutch club. So they just needed to convince these players to play for Cape Verde. With that, their team got stronger, and in the African qualifiers, they managed to win 7 matches, finishing first in their group. But Cape Verde still have a lot to improve. In their last 4 friendlies, they had 2 draws and 2 losses. So today, they sit in 69th place. But Cape Verde isn't even the lowest ranked team from Africa that qualified. The next one used to be one of the most feared teams in the African continent. A team that reached the quarterfinals of the World Cup and the 2015 Cup of Nations final. But after that, Ghana entered a crazy decline. They failed to renew their squad, kept changing coaches without building a clear identity, and the federation was even accused of corruption. As a result, they failed to qualify for the 2018 World Cup and were knocked out in the group stage in 2022. But the lowest point came in 2025, when they didn't even qualify for the Africa Cup of Nations. They only made it to the World Cup because in the African qualifiers, they were placed in a much weaker group and only needed to finish first to qualify directly. But in the friendlies leading up to the World Cup, they lost to Japan, lost to South Korea, got thrashed 5-1 by Austria, and lost to Germany. As a result, they sacked their coach in March 2026. So right now, Ghana is in a really bad spot in the rankings, sitting in 74th place. But there are still 3 teams even weaker, and the next country is also the smallest in the entire tournament. It's literally from a tiny island near Venezuela that has a population of just 150,000. It should be impossible to build a competitive team from that. But this tiny country called Curaçao had a strategy. They went after players born in Europe who were able to represent them, like their center back Obispo, who was born in the Netherlands and plays for PSV. Even then, they never really had a chance to reach in the World Cup. They always needed to go through teams like Mexico and the United States. But for 2026, with these stronger teams already qualified, Curaçao only had to beat smaller countries to secure their spot. But against other teams, they really struggle. They've lost 2-0 to Kazakhstan, 2-0 to China, and 5-1 to Australia. Not to mention a 7-0 loss to Argentina. So Curaçao sits very low in the rankings, in 81st place. But if they're weak, the next team actually got thrashed by Curaçao. That's the level we were talking about. In mid-2025, Curaçao faced Haiti and won by 5-1. Haiti didn't seem to have any chance of qualifying for the World Cup, because to make it, they needed to finish first in the group with Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Honduras, which was a huge challenge. Honduras even beat them 3-0. But despite that, Haiti managed to win 3 out of 6 matches and finished first, securing a direct spot at the World Cup. But in their last 12 games across all competitions, those 3 wins were the only ones they had. Haiti also had 4 draws and 5 losses, including defeats to Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, and even a draw against Trinidad and Tobago. They were even eliminated in the group stage of the Gold Cup. So today, Haiti sits in 83rd place in the rankings. But now we reach the lowest ranked team in the World Cup, and it's a country that also had the easiest path to get there. So in Oceania, the 2 biggest countries are Australia and New Zealand, but Australia chose to play for Asia, so that makes it the most unbalanced continent. It's basically New Zealand against a bunch of small island nations. Before, they still had to go through the playoffs, but now New Zealand got a direct spot for the World Cup. So all they had to do was win 5 matches against countries like Tahiti, New Caledonia, and Fiji. It was so easy that they won all matches, scoring over 5 goals per game. But beating small countries doesn't count much for the rankings. What really matters is facing teams at your own level. But since securing their spot, New Zealand played 10 friendlies, but only won 2, drew 1 and lost 7. So by only facing weak teams and still losing so many friendlies, New Zealand is the worst team in the World Cup, sitting in 85th place in the rankings. If any of these teams make it past the group stage, it will be one of the biggest underdogs ever. But what did you think of this video? If you enjoyed it, I think you're gonna like this one too. Thanks for watching and bye!